To the gangsters, gang. To the gangsters, gang.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another, I almost said another Saturday night, but what I meant to say was another Thursday night. Gentlemen, we are here. We are live. We are ready to steal your soul. You heard that right. Welcome to Thirsty Thursday. I'm going to be your host. My name is Matt. Sometimes I go by the Grass Factor Martin. And alongside of me here, we've got Mr. Ryan DeMay and Mr. Ray Ito. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing tonight? Have you started any fires? Is anyone mad at you?
No. I mean, should I have started any fires? Are you going to break into We Can't Start the Fire? Like, are you looking to do like a karaoke Thursday?
Start the fire.
Yeah. See? I got it going. This is like, you get a couple of whiskeys in you. I bet you can belt out some tunes. You're like Freddie Mercury, right?
You're damn right I am.
I knew it. Ray, you ever sing karaoke before? I could see young high BAC Ray getting down with some karaoke. You ever do that, Ray? You ever get crazy?
Actually, I think I can do that without the alcohol.
Really?
I can do it without the. I can do it without the booze.
I see Ray with this. We don't even know it. He's probably got this super high falsetto, and he could probably be in like a Bee Gees cover band or something. Like
no
totally
way.
See it.
No
Totally
way.
see it.
You see, the coconut shrimp girls haven't been able to chop off my nuts, so I will never sound like that.
Or maybe Prince. I could also see Prince. You are kind of like the Prince of Turf. You do this. You do the stuff that nobody was doing. Now maybe not with all the androgynous outfits and the weird colors and stuff like that. I don't see you doing that. But hey, to each their own, right? You do it in your own separate way. You're buttoned down. You got your jeans on. You're the Hilo cowboy, and we're proud of you for it. Speaking of cowboys, we're up here in Canada, and I am so glad to have my Canadian brethren, right? Which in most parts of the world, Ohio is in the United States, but if you live in map world, an SEC country, right? If it doesn't exist in any of if there's not a school that's in the SEC in your state, you might as well be on another continent. Is that accurate? Fair?
You damn right. Y'all are up there in Canada, but you know what? I love you for it anyway, because I didn't realize how redneck Canada was until I met some choice people, and so I'm very proud to welcome y'all to the United States of America. Gentlemen, we've got Dave on tonight. Dave, talk to us. Tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What do you do on weekends? How much time have you spent in federal prison? All the fun stuff.
Well, obviously, I've been in the turf industry for quite a long time, and graduated from Ohio State University. I was in the golf industry for a long time. And basically fell in love with golf at age 12, fell in love with the architecture, the maintenance of it, and pursued this thing for 40 years. Golf course superintendent up until about 1995 when Toro was launching a division called the BioPro division. And a very interesting concept that they had, where we would let me explain this again. They wanted to do high detail feeding on golf courses and use near infrared spectrography or tissue testing as the source of the information that would write a nutrient program on golf courses. So they gave me a lab, a box of research paper, and told me to go, you know, help golf course superintendents. And that was a really interesting time. I learned more there than at any point in my career, because I literally had a mobile lab and would go golf course to golf course and tissue test greens mainly and write nutrient programs based off the tissue test results, the soil test results, that the latest one they would provide me, and I would correlate why the soil was set up the way it was into why the tissue was responding the way it was, and then try to come in between with the nutrient program. It was a really fascinating time. And it was basically the advent of spoon feeding golf greens. Before that, even as me as a golf course superintendent, we were using a lot of methylene ureas, Scott's Pro Turf products, things like that, and that's how we fed the greens. And it made for a lush green turf when you didn't want it. So hot, humid, thunder showers, wet conditions. The greens were lush. They were doing way more than you wanted to, and we were losing the green speed. So what we were doing was basically teaching superintendents through the use of the tissue lab how to spoon feed for 1 or 2 weeks, and that's it. And then go back out, fill the rig up again, look at your weather, and really highly detailed micromanagement of nutrition in golf. And then since then, I've become an applicator. So now I'm working on turf that is higher than 7/16 of an inch. And I've been doing that for about the last 15 years.
It's funny first off, the BioPro line I think came and gone before I got into the industry. But you talk about methylene urea, and one of the things that I remember distinctly going out with all the damn time was I think I was buying from Regal Chemical at the time, and I want to say it was called Spider maybe, and it was a methylene urea product that we would spray relatively frequently, and then there was also a granular product. I don't remember if we got that from Regal or not though, but it was a granular methylene. So we would front load with methylene urea and then spray like this spider product, which I think was just a relabeled Coke Nitamin at the time, and we're just spraying that constantly. It's interesting. I was looking up the Bio Pro line here, and some interesting products here, right? And you see some of these today. But I would be curious to look at a label of, if anybody can find a label of one of these, I would love to go through and look at this. A 1200 with 8% iron, right? I mean, that sounds like any what is it, Turf Max AC or Turf Nectar AC or
Turf
whatever
Nectar,
it
sure.
is. Yeah. A 600 though, I don't know what that is. I'm looking at a soil conditioner that increases root activity and increases CEC. So I'm thinking there's some sort of humic and kelp deal there.
Humic, yeah.
I'm guessing. And then a Bioplex MP, which, and were all of these private labeled by Ecologel? Ecologel?
Um, as I remember, it, Toro bought two companies, uh, and one of them was down in Florida. Gosh, this is 30 years ago, and and God, what? Uh, I forget the name of it, but basically they bought into two companies and then created their product line from that. And really, the most popular product I sold was a product called Tough Greens, which was calcium, silica, and a little bit of boron and a little bit of potassium. And this was like my number one product that I recommended on greens.
Sounds like
Because
some Grig products there.
it was a precursor to Griggs products. And the whole point of this thing was that I got to the point when I was doing all this tissue testing and trying to unlock little details on how we can manipulate the cellular makeup of the plant. And it was right at the time where people were starting to spray Primo on their greens. Okay, and you took the product Tough Greens with the silica and calcium. We're thinking a very rigid cell turgor pressure, and then hit the grass with Primo. You didn't even see grass blades anymore. They disappeared, but it was there. And what we got was very hardy grass that the greens were tough, but it was green speed. There was no friction of the ball rolling across the tip of those little mini plants. And I lived that for about 6, 7 years, trying to really max out what we could do to manipulate the cell, thus manipulate the plant, and produce a healthy, durable playing finish, and get these guys off the methylene ureas, get them off of the manures, all the things that ruin their summer, and get them to think, okay, 1 week or 2 weeks, that's what we're going to feed for. And it was a fascinating time during that period.
Look
Okay,
at
there
this
you go.
here.
Yeah, now. Okay.
What do we got here? A little
Sodium
calcium.
silicate. Yep.
Yep.
I mean,
Sodium
that is
silicate?
yeah, sodium silicate. So we were just trying to drive that silica to the cell wall, drive it to the cell wall to give it more strength and turgor pressure, get the blade standing up. And these guys would hit it with Primo. It's like I don't even see a grass blade anymore. And I think that was kind of the beginning of really chasing green speed without beating up the grass to do it. And now they beat up the grass, roll the grass, and do that. And, greens are just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah, what is it? What is it now? The old adage is brown and fast, brown hard and fast, kind of sort of thing. And I mean, I say that
That
loosely,
went away a
right?
little while ago, but yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know.
Well,
Actually,
all right.
I
Well,
know it as fast and fiery because
fast and fiery.
believe it or not, Dave, even though I'm a residential turf person, my background and my approach to turf grass is more like golf turf. I'm a little
Mhm.
bit different. And what you see behind me is actually what's called a bowling green, a lawn bowling
Okay.
green. And that's kept according to similar rules to a putting green, in that my club members, they're not going to be mad at me if the green is a little bit fast and fiery, but they will get mad if the green is overly green and it slows down the bowl. So
Exactly.
and that even translates down to residential turf, because I had to smile to myself a little when you said that you're now worried about keeping grass above 7/16 of an inch. For
Yeah.
me, even on my residential turf, Dave, 7/16 to me, I consider that a high cut,
Right.
because
Right.
all my mowing, even on a residential lawn, is done with a full on golf green mower.
Yeah, I've been following you for a long time, like on lawn site, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
this
The
guy.
lawn
This
side.
guy is. It's like
It's
that's
extra.
where I first kind of. Go ahead.
This guy is extra. Just say it.
This guy's done
Well,
all
that's
the
where I
gateway
first came
drugs.
across. Yeah, that's where I first kind of came across your name, probably 12 years ago. It's like, wow, this
Mm-hmm.
dude really, now he's taking care of different grass, but man, this guy is real sharp. I mean, dialed in with how to, manage a whole host of problems and come up with a, a solution, because that's what you did on that site. You gave people a lot of advice, and
I also caught a lot of hell for it. I
did
caught
you?
so much. Yeah, I caught so much hell for it. For what I said, because you see, I caught hell for not following dogma. I mean, there was a couple of guys out there that just gave me shit, all the way down to me being an idiot because I'm running a reel mower on residential turf. And to that sheep thruster in Montana, go eat a bag of dicks.
Ray is holding
Wow.
no hard feelings against I can't even remember his name. What was his name, Ray?
Skipster.
Skipster. Yeah. I almost said spite.
And there was
spite something.
and there's this granola eater from California. I want him to go to San Francisco and get sodomized.
I tried to catch it. I tried to catch it. It's funny, if that was the I guess the acceleration of the way greens are managed. And it's funny how different I would say the evolution on the lawn care side of things is relatively resistant to all of that, right? There
Hmm.
have been no major shakeups or changes in the way lawn care has been conducted because, Barefoot Lawns, which was the precursor to True Green, right, wrote the manual, and it was reinforced by Scott's when Scott's got into it, and it's just kind of stayed there. You get a company or two that will come in and shake things up a little bit. Like the guy I was talking to in Connecticut was talking about one of the things they used to upsell was preventative snow mold applications, right? I was like, wow, that's a great idea. That makes perfect sense, right? But in terms of diverting from the playbook, that is such a small piece of diversion from the playbook that you're just not seeing anything wild or extraordinary. You may come across a wild person, a la Ray, for instance, but you're not going to come across a gigantic industry shift, I feel like, up to this point.
Well, to take that a step further, I spent close to a decade on what I thought was cutting edge stuff. And I jumped into long grass and I'm doing it. I do a really good job. I have a big customer base. They love what I do. I need to do more for them, but I'm doing it old fashioned. I feel like if they had lawn care in 1940s, this is how they would be doing it. So with that, that's kind of why I'm on here is I want to talk about the future of lawn care and the future of how we think about, provide. We both want, like, my customer and I have an allegiance. We want the same thing: beautiful, healthy grass. That's it. Green, healthy. Maybe I can do it a different way that fits into efficiencies. And last week, Matt, you talked about the price of commodity urea. All this stuff is going up. If you've been following the news, the supply chain, the labor market, there is so much pressure to be innovative and think futuristically. And the first question I have, which is going to be this oddball question for Ray. Ray, I've got a 50-pound bag of my typical fertilizer. I get great results with it. 65% of that 50-pound bag is SGN 230 limestone. How long until that limestone becomes a cation to displace hydrogen off the site? Because at this point, I'm taking, I do 50 tons of fertilizer a year. I'm doing 28, 30 tons of rock hauling and dumping on lawns. I think that is, it just is stupid. This a
Okay.
different way.
Dave, that's where I'm at because in my location, if you told me that I had to buy a bag of something that was 60% limestone, which by the way, either will aggravate my alkalinity or else if I need the calcium from it, is not going to break down for the next 2, 3, or 4 years if I'm lucky. No, I wouldn't do it. And that's kind of why early on, other than immediately soluble homogeneous granules, from the start of my turf career, I've always sprayed my fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not negotiable. I've always sprayed it. I've gone into methylene urea, but methylene urea, do you know how I use my methylene urea?
Tell me.
It is simply to extend my nitrogen response because I get most of my nitrogen response out of products such as ammonium sulfate and potassium nitrate. And maybe even some what they call ammonium nitrate sulfate, which has come on the market in the last 10 years, and I personally love that product. But the whole point is that by balancing your slower release products with your immediate release, you avoid that situation where you've dumped a whole bunch of slow release stuff and you don't see it right now or you don't see it quickly, but it catches up to you a month later and you regret it a month later. I don't get into that
Yeah,
situation. But that's because
exactly.
I very carefully blend, and I've even used something called UMAX,
Yeah. Okay.
which is stabilized urea, and
Mhm.
the stabilization delays when that urea turns into ammonium and then nitrate. But the way I use that is the same way in that there's a very sharp drop off when your end source is ammonium sulfate, ammonium nitrate, or else potassium nitrate. So by putting that UMAX in there, I come up with a blend that is what I call a lot more lawn care friendly.
Now, Ray, I haven't quite figured out, are you also managing the mowing on these properties?
Totally,
Okay,
totally.
so you need to manage your, you know, how much clipping you're yielding, and so you have to dial this thing in. The customer wants green, thick lawn,
Actually,
and
they
you
want it short
need
and thin. They
okay,
want it short and thin.
okay,
That's what the call is for.
okay. So you're trying to put the whole, and I'm sure you've uh, done it, figured it out years ago, but it's in a practice. So you're at these properties every week?
Every week to every 14 days, I'm there.
Okay. And then you can make a management decision on nutrients because you have to be there to mow it. So you're able to respond, on each individual property. I got to get the sprayer out right now.
Yeah, I gotta get. I gotta make my application. I have to hammer down with the PGR because, by the way, I use a lot of PGR as well.
Okay.
I'm a
Wow.
heavy
Yeah.
I'm a heavy PGR user.
Well,
but
go ahead. I didn't mean to cut
but
you off.
no problem. But the foundation for that is I first dial in my irrigation and my N first. You see, PGR is never intended to be a get out of jail card because I'm overdoing my nitrogen and my water. You
Hmm.
see, I consider that basically a fail. If I look at a
Yeah.
lawn and I say, oh no, I shouldn't have put down that AMS so heavy. Now I have to regulate the damn thing. I don't
You're you
practice like that.
you're using the regulation to transfer energy that normally would go. I mean, I've been studying this in long grass,
Hmm.
using PGR to transfer energy, and it's not going to work for me. So, you know, I just can't keep. I'm hoping to be at a monthly schedule for my what I call my Class A lawns, the lawns that the budget isn't a big thing. They just want real nice. And I kind of studied the idea of doing a PGR for energy transfer and, really help utilize the plant healthcare through a PGR. It's not going to work. So my latest thing that I've been studying here, which is where the whole crowd and kind of the idea I brought in, was the idea of going out with a 5, 6 month base nitrogen, plastic coat nitrogen, a surf coat, pound and a half,
Wow.
Well,
pound
let's
and a half
Wow.
in the spring.
let's dive into this. So
Mm-hmm.
I put together a series of different images for us to take a look at, and we can all kind of talk through this. JPink, if you want to throw up the first one here, um, the product that you use right now that is 65% rocks, does it contain any slow release?
About 50, typically summer, I'm about a 50 PCS SCU. Now I
Okay.
start the year off with, and it just works great because I do a really heavy fall, 2 heavy apps in the fall, and all my yards are beautiful in the spring. I don't dare want to put fertilizer on them until May. But I got to get out there and get the prodiamine down. So I use a 40, it's a 16% nitrogen, 1624 with 45% biosolid because that isn't going to kick in for a while. And another 25% PCSU. So I'm about 75%, 80%, real slow release in the spring because I don't want it to be more than it already is. So that's how
So
it starts. And then
well,
I think he
we got a
dropped.
freeze here.
Yeah. That's not on us.
Okay, we'll give him a second to
We'll
talk
riff
here.
on that. No, listen. So, okay, Matt, real quick on the biosolids thing. I know what Ray feels like, right? Like,
okay,
you know,
yeah,
oh, there
All
you're
right,
back.
all right,
Okay,
we're back. We're back.
we're back. Go on.
yeah.
Your video is still frozen, Dave, but your audio is not.
Your audio is good. Oh,
Oh, he might be dropped.
Dave,
He
you,
just
you
dropped
may have to
again.
refresh your browser and see
Here
if
he
you
is.
can.
Oh, there he
Oh,
goes. There he is.
oh, and we're back.
And we're frozen. Yep.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about the biosolid thing. So I have no inherent issues just through and through with biosolids. In terms of it being an organic matter source, it's fine. Combining it in this method with what I like about this product is that it is a diversification of nitrogen sources and release times. Right, you've got in one instance is going to be quick release, right, which makes perfect sense. In another instance, you have slow release derived from PCSEU, and pretty much all PCSEU on the market right now is Coke Agronomics, which is now Allied Nutrients XCU. And this was the kind of the answer to sulfur coat ureas, which ran into issues with fertilizer dumping that we were so familiar with. That if anybody in the mid 2000s or even the late 2000s went out with a sulfur coated urea and put down a pound and a quarter of it and watch your lawn absolutely smoke like you dump ammonium nitrate on it after a rain, well, that was kind of the nature of SCU. It would dump and fail, right? And so Coke's answer to that was this PCSCU technology. You also see it as Poly Plus over at Lesco, and effectively it's a dual layer, right, where you have a sulfur inner layer and then a polymer outer layer. And the idea is that you get this part of it occurs through diffusion. The release occurs through diffusion, right? So water makes its way in, it begins to dissolve things, it begins to swell. It fractures the sulfur layer and then will slowly diffuse out of that polymer. Eventually, the polymer will burst, and also the sulfur will break down in and release into the soil as well. So this was kind of like the new later grader sulfur coated urea that came out. Um, and it's still pretty much dictated by water, right? Um, not quite the amount of influence that over temperature, but you're also limited in terms of how long this product will release, right? So in effect, you're probably only going to get 30, maybe 40 days of release out of this. And that's not the difference between 30 and 40 days of color response. Because remember, you can go apply straight urea and get roughly 30 days of color out of it, assuming you have a good soil pH and everything else looks fine in the soil, right? So, this is going to be a 30 to 40 day release. So, in there, you could probably expect somewhere like a 40 to 50-day color response, maybe 60 if conditions are just absolutely perfect with it in terms of color response. But this was kind of that initial thing. So if you're looking at your bag of fertilizer, you see polymer coated sulfur coat on it, or Poly Plus, or XCU on it. This is what you're dealing with. You can expect a 40, 50-day color response out of it, and you're managing your nitrogen for about that long. Where this tends to fail is going to be periods of excess rain. You're going to dump urea in that particular instance, right? So if you're on above average rainfall, then you're going to have an above average release curve. And all of a sudden, it may release in 15, 20 days. Here's another thing to take into consideration. If this fractures, if a prill gets crushed, if you walk across the bag of fertilizer and it causes damage, it's going to dump. That polymer coating on the outside has been manipulated and it's no longer together. It will dump. So, not the most advanced slow release technology out there. Definitely not the longest lasting. However, in terms of dollars and cents, this is the cheapest slow release option we have on the market right now. It's cheaper than going out with biosolids, depending on where you get your biosolids, but per unit of N, this is going to be your cheapest slow release option you've got on the market right now, and why it's effectively in just about every off the shelf lawn care fertilizer that you can find anywhere. Um, and Ryan, go ahead and talk about the direction you were going to go with biosolids. I think it makes sense, and I am 100% not against if you are making monthly visits or 6-week interval visits on a lawn care type of program. I have no issue with people incorporating biosolids or poultry manure or any kind of organic matter into their program to diversify in sources and also diversify release curve from the product.
I agree with that. I don't think there's any doubt that diversifying your sources, then, the things I start to think about then is, okay, number one, can we then isolate and tell which source is giving us response when, right? Because if we change the ratios within that product, right, of our derivatives, and then we get a slightly different response, well, what caused it, right? Was it pulling back on the biosolids and pushing forward on the XCU, or just the straight mineral urea that we might have in that product, or what have you, right? So I would just say, if you're going to mix and match within the same bag, generally speaking, is, try to be consistent, at least season to season, or round to round, app to app, year to year, so that you can compare and contrast the type of performance that you're getting. Biosolids, I don't have a problem with them either necessarily. I just know that it's a little bit in vogue because people can kind of take that, and you'll see people say, "Oh, it's organic." Well, no, it's not really organic. It's natural. Well, it's kind of natural, right? But not completely. But it's an excellent use of a byproduct, right? In these, circular economy things that we talk about on Burn and Return, right? By the way, shameless plug, patreon.com/burn and return. Go check us out. Airport beer, buy us one, listen, watch, enjoy. Now, the thing there is that, like you've said, it's cheap filler, right? And it's, admittedly better than limestone. It's got, it's going to have, a lower bulk density, which is going to fill up the bag quicker. So I don't know. I mean, you tell me this, right, Matt, from a fertilizer blending standpoint, and Ray, you can jump in here too. Is this sort of an ends the mean, or means the end, or an ends the mean, that we've got a cheap source? It fills the bag up. It's got some some agronomic benefit that we can claim, right? And everybody's happy at the end of the day? Or is this really like, hey, this is the best thing that we can put in here right now based on, the options we have available and the price point that we need to be in, all that kind of stuff? I mean, what is the driving, motivating factor here?
It's all right. Really, this is what it comes down to, right? If you have the option of filling your bag of fertilizer with rocks or with an organic material and you're managing 2, 3, 4 inch tall grass, 100%, the advantage is to the organic matter. It just is. Now, conversely, if you're managing half-inch tall Bermuda grass, or a hundredth of an inch Tiff Eagle, it's not to your advantage, right? Neither of those are to your advantage. You can't afford to have rocks down, and you can't afford to apply the organic matter either. So, in a lawn care type setting, in my opinion, it has enough of a positive benefit. And here's the other thing too, is that these big fertilizer blenders, do you know what they're paying for biosolids?
Good.
Class
90,
A EQ biosolids.
90,
You
100
see
bucks a
me?
ton.
Yeah, the cost of freight. So
Get it out of
for
my face.
for them, what they get to do is instead of paying $150, $200 a ton for rock, they can take something that's $90 to $100 a ton, blend it in, increase the value of their product, make a little money up where they lose on price fluctuations of urea and MAP, DAP, and potash, right? And it helps balance the books a little bit, and it's a win for the applicator. And from the applicator perspective, the applicator then gets to market themselves differently, right? They get to alter the message that they tell from the playbook that True Green wrote, right? True Green wrote the playbook that, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And now all of a sudden, this gives the competitive advantage to the applicator to say, I do things differently. Somebody asked, are all biosolids used in the U.S. manufactured in the U.S.? Yes. We are not importing biosolids that I have ever seen. That would be a huge no-no, and that would get people sent to jail, more than likely. There's a lot of risk involved there. So no, you would never see biosolids from outside the United States make it to the U.S.
Can I add that the biosolid isn't, for me, it's just a delay of having nitrogen. The way I run my first round, I kind of want something going to, I'm going to run out of steam from my
Yep.
late season feed about the 1st of May. So the idea is to really slow down and delay the nitrogen I'm putting down the end of March. I really don't want anything happen. So with the cool soils,
I think we froze
Oh, no.
again.
Yeah.
We froze again. Having
I-
some technical difficulties here. But that in that
Okay.
instance there, that makes perfect sense, right? So you're capitalizing on soil temperatures and soil moisture to induce the mineralization and facilitate the long-term release of the biosolids, right? So you've got a quick product, you've got a 45-day product, and then you've got a 60 to 90-day product all combined in one. Makes perfect sense. I've got nothing against that. I think that's perfectly fine. And that's a way to do it. Conversely, I'll put another option in front of you, and this is where we'll dial back into your old tried and true favorite, methylene urea, right? Methylene urea is going to function the exact same way, close to exactly the same way as a biosolid would in terms of nitrogen release, right? A little bit different because you've got different lengths of carbon chains that go there. You've got some fraction of it that's going to be cold water soluble. You got a fraction of it that'd be hot water soluble, and then a fraction of it that's 100% insoluble at all. The difference is that this is a product that's going to cost $1,000 a ton, $1,100 a ton in bulk, commodity type price, versus a biosolid that is going to give you is $90 to $100 a ton, right? But you're also dealing with something that's going to deliver anywhere between 30 and 40 units of nitrogen, and something that's only going to deliver you between 3 to maybe 6 units of nitrogen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So your cost per acre, right? So let's just do the math on that real quick. Let's just say that retail, right? I'm going to buy that at, what do you think? 125 a ton. If I'm just buying straight, I'm just thinking like Top Cut, from Spring Valley. I can't even think of what that is right now. Let's just say, I don't know. Give me a number, Matt. Come on. Price is Right rules. Don't be over.
For what? Biosolids?
A bag of 440.
$10 a bag in bags.
Oh, it's gonna be more than $10. We'll call it 12.
We'll call
Way
it
more
12.
than that. Let's call it 12.
You're
So
right, you're right.
yeah, my cost, dog. My cost. All right.
Okay, sorry.
You're fine. So 480 a ton.
Price is
right?
wrong, bitch.
Yeah. Wah. Ray, how do you like the braces right while I'm doing the math here? Is it a good game show for you? If you had to be on, this is a great Ray question. This is part of it. By the way, if you are a Patreon, I got to plug this too. If you are a Patreon, next week we have a gift, an absolute gift, because we just hit 25 subscribers on our Patreon for patreon.com/burn return. We are doing an Ask Me Anything. I'm going to preview that right now by asking my friend Ray Ito. Ray, if you could go on any game show and be a contestant, anyone in the world, past or present, what would it be? My first inclination for you would be Fear Factor, but I'm also not sure. I don't know.
No,
What would you do?
absolutely not. Hell no.
You and Joe Rogan
Hell
on Fear
no.
Factor, I think it'd be a great
90-day fiance.
No, I'd actually like.
Bachelor.
I would actually kill it on The Price is Right.
Okay.
I would be killing it on The Price is Right.
Okay. That's funny. Okay, so here we go. Half a pound divided by 0.04, 4.5 times. So yeah, so we're looking at, what is this here? About $120, an acre to get a half a pound out on our biosolids, right? Now let's go with a straight methylene urea product, 3400. That's going to be about $42 a bag. Might be overdoing it a little bit. Might be overcooking it here, but that's okay. So 42. We've got so that bag 1.4. I got to key it in my fancy keyboard. So Price is Right. That's interesting, right? Very, very interesting. 64. So you're at okay, here's your difference, Matt and Ray. 120-ish an acre on the biosolid. You're at about $52 an acre on your methylene.
So you're still saving $70 an acre by going with something that costs $1,200 a ton versus, or $1,000 a ton versus something that costs $500 a ton, right? So
correct.
Right.
It all comes down to the appropriate math, right? Because you can shade up that math as much as you want, and you can claim a bag rate on those biosolids of 3 pounds per thousand all you want. But really, when it comes down to actual units of nitrogen, which is in the real world how we do math, well, sometimes, when it comes down to actual units of nitrogen, that's how that plays out, right? So
that's how I learned it in tertiary math. So
no, and
go ahead,
and
Ray.
I would also
careful.
look at the factor of I can predict how methylene urea is going to act. I can predict it. Because I know that it does not need extremely high moisture content or extremely high temperatures to kick off like a biosolid, whereas biosolids have screwed me in the past. Lay dormant for months, and then okay, Ryan, biosolids are like the nice girl that you meet at the bar. However, when she takes you home, you're the one that's hogtied and hanging in the middle of the room.
Oh boy. So in Ray's world, biosolids are the ball gag, ladies and gentlemen, of nitrogen sources. That's what he's trying to tell you, right? Put it on, and at some point,
Yes.
it's just going to sound like like that. Okay. So all that being said, so Dave, what you missed, we were kind of doing a price comparison here between the biosolids. Like if we were just looking at biosolids and just looking at a methylene urea. I don't know if Dave's still there. He's dropping in a. Okay, we're just talking about end sources. We're gonna pretend. Here's what we're gonna do from this point forward, ladies and gentlemen. Dave wants to know: is there a possibility that you can change the business model to be a low input? I shouldn't say low input, low labor, or fewer applications with better nitrogen efficiency. And can you build a business around that? We've kind of touched on this topic before, and don't know that we've ever really got in depth with it. So here you're going to have three wildly different views. I can tell you that before we even start this conversation, that Matt is in a part of the country where this could be very dicey. Ray's in a part of the country where it could work some times of the year and not so much in others. And, Ray's just not the person that's ever going to do this, right? Ray's not going to buy a knife sharpener off Amazon. It sticks his knives in and sharpens it, right? You're going to do it the old fashioned way, right, Ray? You're a man of the steel, right? Tiffany,
Oil
if you're
stone.
watching, yeah,
Oil stone.
she does it
I
by
do
hand
the-
too, dog. She usually does it
Mm-hmm.
right up against each side of each side of the sternum, right? This side. Here we go. Tiffany, if you're watching, I'm sorry. You're a great girl. Okay. So here's my question. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, to interrupt you, I feel like we need to do a broad dive into the options of slow release in options.
I think that's a good place to start. What do we have to work with, right? What are the technologies that are available to us? What is going to work in these situations? The one question I was going to ask Dave, and this would be my first question to anybody that was thinking about doing this or really using, picking their slow release, right? And you guys can tell me if you think differently, but my first question would be, are you going to be using this on only irrigated lawns or only unirrigated lawns or both? Because that would drive my decision a little bit in terms of which one I was going to pick for irrigated versus non-irrigated.
That's a good point. So let's take this to kind of the next option here, and we'll talk about
Demay.
polymer coated urea.
Demay.
Yeah.
Dave says both.
Both unirrigated and
irrigated and
both irrigated and unirrigated. He's efforting to reboot everything, and he'll be back.
Can he do a call-in? Can we patch him through on a call-in? Would that be easier?
If this doesn't work,
Good
that's
idea.
what we're gonna do.
Okay, cool.
Yep. That'll work. JPing, if you pull up the next one after methylene urea here, and we'll just kind of talk about polymer coated urea. And when I'm talking about polymer coated urea, I'm lumping a lot of things into here, and there's some variation that occurs between these that gets into stuff that I don't even understand. Like for instance, if you've ever heard of polyon, if you've ever heard of duration, Purcell has their own technology, and Diamond K, Pure Coat, I think what that is. And so I'm lumping all of those into kind of one, right? Because there's the differences between them are relatively low. But the idea is that you have this polymer layer on the outside, right? And these tend to be more heat driven in terms of the rate at which they release the water will move inside, begin to dissolve the urea. It will swell, and heat tends to dictate the release of it. If I understand it all correctly, that's how you will get that release that moves its way out, right? So with this, where you can run into some wild variance in terms of the release is going to be your temperature, right? Because some of these are temperature dependent, but also the weight of the coating on the outside. And to put this into perspective, if you've ever heard of duration 45, duration 90, duration 120, duration 180, right? That all is a signifier to the weight of the coating that exists on the outside of the urea. Now, like we talked about with PCSCU and XCU, if these prills are damaged, you will get a dump. The release curves that these products are defined on are typically done so at 86 degrees Fahrenheit is where I typically see most of these performed at, right? And like for instance, if you go ahead and go to the next slide here, you'll see this is what's that, Ray?
Matt, I believe the release curves are figured on, I believe, 70 degree soil temperatures. And the reason why I say 70 is because you see all of this, 45-day coating, for example. In my area, I call that a 30-day. The 80-day coating, I call that a 45-day. And 120-day coating, I call that a 60-day coating. And better pray to the gods that I don't cut it with my mower or groomer. I don't cut the granule.
Look at this. We've got real turf truth. We've got jokey turf truth in the chat tonight. This is on fire, gentlemen. This is absolutely on fire. Is this going to finally calm the suggestion that I'm turf truth?
No, it's only going to make it worse.
Is it only going to make it worse?
Yeah.
Okay. We've got 2 in the chat right now, and that is interesting. Somebody said, "Oops, wrong account." Okay. Yep. So, Ray, you're talking about that, and that's because it's rated on a 70 degree. When I was putting all this together, I felt like I saw 86 a couple of times. Oh. Actually, I got another slide that does have temperature on here.
Damn.
JPink, if you skip 2 and go to the third one from where we are right now, basically these are just showing release curves based on the weight of the polymer coating. But here we go, right? This is temperature influence on a 120-day ECU. And this coincides with almost identically to what Ray said here, right? So it looks like that 120 is formulated, somewhere between that 68 and 86 range. But you can see you have released almost 90% of the nitrogen. We've got 3 in the chat now. Boys, we have gone. This is getting out of control. This is getting nuts. We have a no BS turf in the chat now. They probably real mow half-inch St. Augustine. Shout out to those guys, by the way. My old buddy that's out there doing that.
I heard that the Turf Truth program was just 5 rounds of Freedom Fert and call it a year, guys. Isn't that right? Am I right?
Yep.
Am I right?
Red,
you are
white,
totally
blue,
right,
baby.
But this graph right here kind of talks about what I was saying, because actually, let's see, I don't have it in front of me. Well, what is 68F in Celsius? And the reason why I say this is because I'm familiar with Canada, but anyway,
20 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
Okay, 20 degrees Celsius, because I'm familiar with another line of products made by ICL. You know what ICL makes too? Osmocote. And Osmocote is something that I'm very familiar with in the nursery production, and even crossing over into the horticultural maintenance segment, where people spread Osmocote rather than spoon feed 111 soluble, for example.
Now, And correct
However,
me if I'm wrong, is Osmocoat effectively like a polymer coating that is then coated with a paraffin wax, if I understand that correctly?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
yes, true, and they make Osmocoats to release either on a 45-day, 60-day, 90, 120, or even 180, and it's on a base 20C, I believe, base 20 Celsius.
Gotcha.
And that's where if a grower here in Hawaii wants to use Osmocoat, he'd better spend the money and get the 120 or the 180, or else man is going to be in for a ride, because the thinner coatings are just going to flash and then be gone.
Yeah. So, in this idea here that, and why I wanted to put up this chart and talk about this is you have to understand that if we are a function of temperature at the release here, right? You have to understand that uh, uh, you have to have predictable weather patterns, I would say, right? Because if you run
Mm-hmm.
into a stretch, and I'll talk about Pennsylvania. I don't think it was this past season, but the season before, Pennsylvania ran into one of those situations where they were 90 degrees in like May, and they were going through extreme drought. If I recall correctly, I remember talking to Nate, who we had on the show out of it, Nate Alleman, Barefoot Lawns up
Mm-hmm.
in
Yes.
Pennsylvania, great guy. But everything shut down and went completely dormant from like May through July, if I recall correctly. And they were experiencing extreme heat. When you are spending the money on one of these products like that, and you have a weather anomaly, obviously that's not the norm, then you run the risk of dumping in. Now, if you don't have the water to coincide with it, that may actually kind of save you in that scenario too, though, right? Because you need water for
Yes.
release and you need temperature for release. So if you don't have both of those coming together in synchronization, then one might save you from the other. But say you're trying to irrigate your way out of this, but you're consistently 90 95 degree days, you don't have 100% perfect coverage, you've only got parts of the yard that are green, and you're dumping in those areas, that can create a bit of a headache for you as well too. So you're not
We should have
free
Dave on the
and
line, by the way.
clear. Do what?
Dave's on the line.
Sup,
Dave, are
dog?
you there?
I want the highest tech program I could possibly come up with, but I can't log into a computer. So
Yeah, we want to upsell that snow mold program so that you can get the gigabit internet. We're gonna do that for you. By God willing, we're gonna make it happen. Hey, so
what did I
we,
miss? What
we just said since Turf Truth's in here, we said we're just gonna do 5 apps of Freedom Fert and call it a year. So just order your truckloads now, get the deals while you can, and yeah, we'll go forward from there. Okay, so kind of what we were talking about was temperature relative to release, right? And particularly for the poly-coated products here, a fantastic graph that's up on the screen right now, showing, sort of those trajectories of the curves, right? That, where we go as we heat up, right? And you can see just how steep that curve is at 86F as compared to 50F. So, the things to consider here, and that was the one reason I asked about irrigated versus unirrigated, and Matt made the great point here, is that, Ray, I don't know what your feelings are. Certainly interested to hear your opinion. I know where Matt likes to use methylene urea. He likes to do it at the end of the year, so it sits there and he looks like a freaking hero in April.
Yeah.
Hey, I know your game, Martin. I know how you work. I know how, you got everybody on the block fawning over those Matt Martin lawns, and they're like, "Gosh darn, man, who's treating that lawn over there? Is that Cam lawn? Honey, get the Valpak coupons we got in the mail. I want you to go ahead and call him. We'll get you that $30 app. We'll get free one." I'm gonna write him a check inside the house in the nude. Like, yeah, that's another burn and return thing. We're really mixing and matching here. I am anyway. Sorry, I can't help myself.
What
So
some
go
of
ahead.
the consulting I'm doing. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good. No, you're good. Go ahead.
Some of the, the only place that I know of that is using this with pretty good success is some golf course superintendents. And they're running fairways. They're actually doing a product called One and Done, where they're putting out their, season-long fertilizer with a Aceleprint. And they're doing really what they really like that product. Now, they're also running, Trim It, Cutlass, but they're doing those more for maintaining the holding off the P.O.T.U.S trivialis invasion in P.O.T.U.S invasion, and so they're kind of using it to manipulate the the actual turf coverage, bentgrass turf coverage. Now, I do know an applicator in my area that uses this, and I gotta tell you, I think his lawns look pretty darn good, throughout the entire summer. And I don't think he sells it well. I don't think he follows up. My big thought is that I kind of want to use this as like a, like if you were going to do a painting, with a canvas, you're going to put a foundation, background like the old Bob Ross videos, and use that so it's kind of like always there, but not too much, and then come in with your regular 5 application program and get on it with your spray program and add, like Ray does. He shows up, he's going to do his maintenance work, and he might make a decision. Well, you know what? I need a little bit more of this out of that. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking, because the customers that I picked up from the guy that uses a one app system is that there's not enough follow up. Well, I think it's a good opportunity to get.
That's easily corrected, though. That's easily corrected, though. I mean, so you're just saying that they feel like, hey, you showed up once, I paid you whatever, $500, I don't know, right? And you're gone for the summer.
Yeah, and it allegedly they're going out and spraying some weeds and things, but go out there and do something that they can visually say, hey, the flag's in the yard, 2 days later, it's even greener. That's kind of.
Go ahead, Ray, because there's a whole bunch I want to say, but I want you to go first. Go for it.
Okay, if you know how I always harp about pH and micronutrients, Dave. You know how I'm always harping on that? You see, you know why? Because I'm using pH and micronutrients to get my color. I don't chase color by putting down nitrogen. I mean, I just do not. So like what I'm doing is, say somebody tells me, lawn's looking a little peaked. So then at that point, I'll load up the sprayer with some chelated iron and micronutrients, hit it, and grass turns green, and everybody's happy.
Right, everyone's happy.
Especially me, because I'm not creating a problem for myself by overdoing my nitrogen in the name of getting the grass greener. And conversely, the customer's happy because they get this, weird lawn that doesn't look like it's growing a lot, but it's green. Versus they're all familiar with the over-fertilized lawn, because that's the lawn that you literally cannot keep up with the mowing.
Yeah, and
Just keep
I'm not
doing
in charge of and when I put in a new lawn, I've got probably 50, 60 of them in. And I don't do the mowing, but I can control who mows it. And so I've got a network of guys that do mowing, and just getting them trained how I want it mowed, what height I want it. I mean, it took a year for one guy to figure out that, you're cutting at 3 1/4 inch. And and he goes, but I'm set at, 3.75. And I go, but measure the blade. Go and measure the blade. And here he had never aired up the tires since he rolled it off the showroom floor. It's like your tire pressure was down. And so the whole mowing part of this matrix, the health of the grass completely depends on it. The growth rate, the mowing height, the mowing frequency. And, I'm just looking at it is that I don't want grass blowing out of the ground just to make it green. And this year I did an experiment on my Kentucky bluegrass lawn. And it was the lowest amount of nitrogen I've ever applied in June. I'll fertilize really well in the fall, heavy fall application, and let that thing run until I see that it's just not growing. It just doesn't have that vitality and color. And that's usually about the first or second week of June. I don't fertilize any of my grass in the springtime. And then this year I put, I'm going to say 0.5 pounds with, the 50% poly-coated solver coat. And I ran 4 months on that with tweaking the color once a month with micros, some humics, fulvics, just spoon feeding it, and just had the healthiest, greenest lawn I've had all year. And that's kind of where I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking. This is how I want to proceed in the future, and not haul all that rock all season long. Just be married to hauling bags of rock.
I mean,
it's astounding.
So I'm going to think about this just out loud and just kind of walk through it. So my thought on that is, in the fall, making those applications, you're capitalizing on the soil temperature, right? As soil temperatures begin to decline, you tend to have increased stability out of your nitrogen.
Yeah.
A wild kind of generalization there, but for the most part, as your soil temperatures decline, you get increased or a decrease of volatility out of your nitrogen. Leaching is still a thing, but I digress. That's where we are. So you're able to capitalize on that, and you're not really having to worry about surge growth a whole lot there because you don't have the temperatures to support the surge growth, right? So you do get a lot of carryover from there into the spring. You let that carryover continue your color response into the spring, right? And then where you have to go down again, you've exhausted what exists in your soil, and you have to go down again. The idea, the name of the game is managing that surge growth, right? And if you feel like you're getting too much surge growth out of that product with rocks, then 100% it makes sense to consider like a product like a One App. And JPink, I've got an actual label, not a spec sheet, but a label here that's going to have it'll be a 30-015 here. And this is a sports turf One App product. So as you can see here, it's got a fraction of quick release nitrogen. It's got potassium from potassium nitrate. What a rare potassium source to see in a bag of fertilizer. And you've got these poly-coated ureas. And what we have here is duration CR that we were just looking at. And I can tell you that from dissecting these products, you're going to see a range of different duration CRs in this, of that upwards of 120-day release out of it. They may even go 180 in some of these products. I didn't look at all of them,
That's
but
what I'm looking at. Yeah, 180.
yeah, and so you're applying another product that is going to give you an initial color response and is going to give you a drip feed of nitrogen over an extended period of time. And where you're in an area where you're not going to be blasted by 100-degree temperatures, and what's most important is going to be your nighttime temperatures. You're not going to have 80-degree nighttime temperatures that are going to allow for a significant amount of dump in this scenario, where you're going to run into significant amounts of surge growth, and then your program's up in arms, right? Because it's growing to holy hell. You're having to cut off, you're mowing once a week and you're cutting off 4 inches. The likelihood of you running into that is slim to none. And that frees you up. You're not hauling rock. You're applying actual nutrients with this bag of fertilizer. I guarantee you, I haven't done the math on it, but I guarantee you that this bag is about as close to 100% fertilizer as you can get. I can math that out and confirm that. And so you're not hauling rock, you're applying all nutrients, and that frees you up during the summer months. You've got plenty of in release coming here. You've got all the in you could possibly need that is going to manage that surge growth, right? And then that frees you up to do the other types of things that you want to do to give you that trickery, right? If you want the blue-green color for the micronutrients, exactly. It frees you up with the app time and the app space and the tank space to be able to go do that. And somebody's asking here, do the app rates stay the same? Well, this is where it gets into trickery, right? No, they do not, because there is still a certain amount of nitrogen that the plant can utilize. And, we've got the growth probability model to look at for things of that nature. It depends on your genetics. All of those kind of come into play as far as how much in you need to be applying. My advice there, and this is not going to help the homeowner crowd out there, is that apply the amount of nitrogen your turf needs, right? And if you've got, how about
that's such a cop out?
It is totally a cop out, right? And I don't want to be
Matt, be the way you want to be. Go to Golden Crown, be the way you want to be.
And let me tell you, the way I would do it is I err on the side of high nitrogen. And that's just the way I do. If you took a lawn program from Ray and you literally went the opposite direction of it, you would see what Matt Martin does. It is two totally opposite. I chase color with nitrogen. Ray does not, right? And it's just the way we manage styles. Ray's gentle on zoysia grass. He's got to cut zoysia grass. He's got to make people happy with zoysia grass. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I treat it like I'm a horse jockey out there whooping up a horse in the middle of a Kentucky Derby kind of thing. I spank the holy hell out of it and then deal with the aftermath. And so anyway, I don't know, Cleveland lawn care, like the back of my hand. If I had to guess, you're probably somewhere in that 3 to 4 pounds in range. And you can easily.
I am. I'm like right in the middle of that per year. Yep.
And so you can do your load in your fall. You can do your one app in the spring, and then that frees you up so much of your budget. And well, maybe not budget, because you're going to blow a significant amount on this product, but it frees you up from a labor perspective to do the other types of things that you want to do.
Exactly. And those things are stuff that my customers want me to do. That I'm just married to rocks. I'm married to rocks all season long. They want more. I want to put in more lawns. I'm pre-buying seed because of the seed disaster in Washington and Oregon. And so I'm putting out money and I'm buying seed now that isn't going to go out until next year. And one thing about the idea of doing this is that August, September, I have more time to put lawns in because I'm still eking out color. the lawns are going to be colored. We'll run through them. We'll keep them, tweaked. But I see so much efficiencies built into changing this whole idea of got to get out there, pound it again so that the mower guy can come and hate me in 2 weeks. And, it's why I kind of, there just isn't a whole lot of information anywhere about this method of doing it. But, you said it last week. You got to plan. You guys have to think different and plan different on your nitrogen because it's just getting more expensive. Labor's tighter and more expensive. So efficiencies are kind of where I'm thinking I need to be in the future and still deliver that beautiful green and maybe do it a little bit more, best practices.
Agreed. I think there's different schools of thought, and I think that commodity lawn care and the way that it's evolved over the last 40 years, right, is really a dinosaur. It really is in terms of agronomic practices, best practices. From an environmental fate standpoint, and that's the first thing I want to show you. So, the first question I'd ask, number one, is are we irrigated or unirrigated? Because that's going to dictate a little bit of maybe the programs that I would look at in the here and now. So first, JPink, throw up the second photo that I sent you, and let's look at that one first. All right, so this is from a paper, and it's been an ongoing research project now for better than 20 years. I don't know if it's still going on. The latest report that we have from it's from 2018, but this is Dr. Kevin Frank up at Michigan State University. He took over this research from a previous professor that was there. And what they were looking to do is in a home lawn situation, right? We put turf under a high end regime, which the first 5 or 6 years of this study, it was under 5 pounds per thousand at the high rate and 2 pounds per thousand in the low rate. And so here you can see this is their data from 2006. This is a few years after they made their switch. And what they found initially at that 5 pound rate was that they were getting way too much leachate, like on the order of 10x leachate that was coming through into the lysimeters that they used to capture this right below these plots. All right. And so what they did here was they labeled the sense. These are radioactive isotope. They take it and they label it so that they can come back and find it in the plant and in all these other plant parts here. So what this is showing us here, right, is that at the high rate, so this is the 4 pound per N rate on the right, 2 pound N rate on the left. Okay. Look how much more is in the soil, right? Number one. Look how much is more in the leachate. We're still 10x on our leachate here at the high rate, and that's even after bumping it down by an order of 20%. Okay. So we're capturing more nitrogen in the soil, right, at the low rate of 2 pounds. Now, what Frank has postulated and what he's found is that the older the lawn gets, right, in terms of age, the less nitrogen it actually needs. So where you have lawns and maybe some of the older subdivisions that were built, say 95 or before, there's a very good chance that even if, somebody wasn't doing a whole lot to that lawn for some or all of that period, that it's likely that, after maybe a short period of acclimation to, fertilizing it again, if it hasn't been fertilized, or as you assume control of that lawn as the contractor there, it might not need your standard program where, you're thinking, hey, 3, 4, maybe a little bit more pounds of N. That might not be in the playbook, right? So from a best practice and ecological standpoint, absolutely. Dr. Frank here has proven, right, that we look at this in a long-term study, a truly, like, this is decades long now at this point. The data bears out that there's no financial, ecological, or agronomic benefit to increasing or having high rates of applications of nitrogen. Okay. So that's just what the data bears out.
Yeah.
This is the best study that we have to look at these long-term. And so then you start dividing and subsetting out your lawns from a standpoint of how old are they, right? How long have they been established? So just because the house is in 95 doesn't necessarily mean the lawn's 25 or whatever years old. Somebody could have redone it at some point, whatever the case might be. But with age comes, less nitrogen that's needed. Okay. So
And then,
that's an
and
important
you're saying
study.
this is at 5 years?
This is 2006. I think they started initial applications in 91. I'll send you the link to the paper. The 2006 was published in the USGA Green section. He had an update in 18 that was in a periodical that doesn't have as much data in it.
So, and what I'm asking is, when you are segregating your lawns by older and newer, how are you defining older lawns? Is that 5 years?
I got to go back and read this, but I want to say that somewhere about 10 years, right? 8-10 years was sort of the cutoff there of what he said. Don't quote me on that, but I've read this several times over the years. I want to say that number jumps out at me. Read the paper. We'll link this up in the show description so you can take a look at some of the, the year by year. That's kind of the nice thing too, is that he put out updates on this, basically every other year, more or less. So you can really kind of follow along with how this ebbed and flowed. It's not like you're just reading an abstract at the very end of this and finding out what he thought over the course of that time. Okay, so that's number one. So that's why I'm thinking about age, right? It's going to dictate some of this, and we'll get to the point of this, like the meat and potatoes, in a second. So JPink, go to that second one, right? This is from our good friend, who we don't know and have never talked to in person, but just fanboy over, Dr. Bill Kreuzer, who I don't know where he got this from. It's in a PowerPoint that he's done and given several times. I've actually watched him give this one, but I don't know where he cites this from. But it is an interesting slide. I've always come back to this, right? So if you take a look at this, Dave, the point is this. If we look at the bottom here, we look at this x-axis. So he's using a product that would be a 400 in terms of ratio NPK, 410, 403, 413. The whole point here is that as you look at the tissue, like the dry weights, if we were to tissue test, just like you used to do back in BioPro, and really look at, hey, what is actually in the plant, right? We look at this and across a range of different fertilizer regimes, right, in terms of what we're supplying on an annual basis, and look at what's in the leaf tissue content. Man, I don't know why it was such a tongue twister. But anyhow, look at the changes or the differences, right? There are none. So it's an interesting study here in terms of if we do have adequate phosphorus and potassium, which our good friend Mr. Mrs. they them, I'm not sure what pronoun I should be using for Turf Truth advocates. We should ask Turf Truth what pronoun they would like to have. That's an important distinction right there. I'll just use
the safe
them.
word. Pineapple juice.
Pineapple juice.
Centipede.
Oh God! Fuck you, Ryan. Why did you do? I was not expecting that, and it shocked me. It literally sent an electrical signal up my spine there. All right, go ahead with this, 'cause this is a good point too.
Like a 9-volt on your testicles. There you go. So the whole point here, Dave, is that, especially this is what we were advocating for in Burn and Return on our last episode, is that especially going into 2022, right? That in most, especially if you're going to advocate a program like this, right? That one, you're not going to find a one and done that's got any P in it at all. It doesn't exist. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the amount of potassium that you're going to have in those products maxes out just because of physical constraints of the bag at 10%, right? Some of them will be 0. I don't think I've ever seen anything other than 0 and 10 in those bags for whatever reason, just based on different products that are out there. So all that being said, right, is that you can use those subsequent apps if you decide to do a one app program with your N, right, at the beginning of the season. You can sell customers and look at this and say, okay, hey, if there is any remediation to do in terms of bringing soil levels up, whether it be PK, other macros or micros, you can use those times, right, to apply that and attack that, as opposed to just Ray's favorite, like the Ray, the 25, 5, 10, little bit of the True Green Special out there, just slinging it all day, every day, like hotcakes, right, Ray?
Yeah, without regard to...
Yep.
Yeah, low P, low K, just everybody gets the same, and it just doesn't make sense when...
It's the prison breakfast
is,
of fertilizers, Ray. The prison breakfast.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the same thing.
Yeah, because what if, in fact, you don't need the P and the K because you have good soil? Then you're just wasting money. And this chart here, this graph here, just illustrates that like none other, because I know 413, that is an expensive analysis to buy right? It's super expensive. So if you don't need it, why do it?
Well, and that's getting back
And
to
You know,
your 1624 or whatever you're using right now. I'm not indicting
Yeah.
you or judging you at all, Dave. It's just more of, are you, especially going into 2022, are you spending money that you don't need to spend? That's my, that's the
I
question I would have
kind
for
of think
everybody.
yeah, I'm that is one of the the big shift for me is that this call it one and done. There's a lot of different ways to
Yeah,
look
yeah,
at
yeah.
it. Is I'm going to go out with my base coat and my prodiamine and spend the rest of the summer making sure I'm doing the most, other than being married to rocks and bags.
Yeah.
2,000 heavy poly bags that can't be recycled that fill dumpsters. I mean, that's just. I'd rather be spraying, buying a little water and putting some goodies in it and making reactions on those stops. But generally, a good turf grass is going to respond well to a little bit of micro nutrient. It's going to be enhanced. That color, I'm basically feeding chlorophyll. I want my chlorophyll to be nice and happy without the big, growth surge that comes with it. And in looking at the chart on a 413, when I did my tissue testing, what I kind of came away with from all those years is grass basically gets what it wants unless you screw it up and force too much at it. Or on the opposite end, not feed it at all. But, if you're kind of somewhere, a general program, you're going to see the phosphorus, you're going to see the potassium. My big thing with greens was how much the USGA pushed potassium in sand-based greens. I mean, it was just ridiculous. There were,
Never catch
I'm
up.
trying to think
Ever.
of the ratios. What's
Yeah,
that?
you'd see ratios, especially when you were doing it, 20 or 25 years ago.
Yeah.
It was not uncommon to see ratios of 1 to 3, 1 to 4 even recommended, right? So 1 to 2
Exactly.
is a
1 to
standard.
3,
Was a
1
1
to
to 2
4.
is 1 to 2 is a standard recommendation, especially on calcareous sand here in Ohio. But yeah, you would see some ridiculously high, and you'd never ever get there.
And what it
So
would do to some of the other macros, like calcium and magnesium, if you were pumping the monovalent potassium, the plant took up potassium, and at the expense of the calcium and magnesium. So I'm like, whoa, chill out a little bit and supplement it. And then if we did kind of just general, if I stopped in a mom and pop golf course and had a talk with them and said, let's do a little tissue testing, where there was no advanced, feeding other than maybe, a bag of Scott's Pro Turf, a couple of times a year, you would see a plant that looked like this chart. It was taking up what it needed, from the system. It found it. And so, I mean, I think that chart's
the
pretty
whole
amazing.
argument of locked up versus unlocked nutrients, and this chaps my ass. And this is something I get real hell bent on. I do not like the term locked up nutrients, but there's a reason why it is valid in some instances and it's not in another. Case in point, if you are applying a soil applied micronutrient mix and are expecting the micronutrient color response from it, and you're applying something in a locked up form like an oxide, the plant is not going to go deficient because it's in an oxide form, but you're not going to get the micronutrient color response you're looking for because it is in a quote unquote locked up form, right? Or it's like another one of those instances where, for the most part, If you do have adequate soil phosphorus, even though it may be tied up as calcium phosphate, even if it may be tied up as ferric phosphate or whatever the case may be, the plant and the exudates from the roots will find a way to take that material up and avoid those deficiency symptoms.
You know what? But real quick and Matt, I'm going to tee you up on this one because I know you want to talk about this and explain it to both Dave and the group. But I think people might not know what a one and done is. So I'm going to quickly explain that and then allow you to explain how the nitrogen process works. So there are products that, in the last 12 or so years, let's just say, have become, I wouldn't say in vogue, but have been offered up as a solution, right? Both for labor savings and a variety of things, right? That they've been marketed in terms of claim benefits and everything. And it's utilizing a certain type of, or a couple different types of slow release nitrogen technologies. And Matt's going to touch on those here in a second. But the idea is that you put these applications out on cool season grass, and you can use them on warm season grass as well. And legitimately, they will last somewhere between as little as 45 days, 90 days is kind of common, 120 days, up to 180 days, right? So imagine if you had a cool season lawn, and I told you, hey, I'm going to give you this product, and you're going to put this out in April, right? And you could legitimately not put any more nitrogen out the rest of the year and probably be okay. If you didn't really want to push your grass too hard and you're okay with just sort of a basic maintenance level of nitrogen, let's just say. Okay. Now you can come in on the backside of that and supplement it, especially if you're using like a 120-day product, which is fairly standard, in the market, or even a 180-day product. You can come in and do, sort of the end of the year, not necessarily like Thanksgiving time here in cool season country, but, late September about till now, mid-October-ish, and do, your final app of the season with your nitrogen of choice. Okay. So it's a labor saver in one regard because you're taking basically 3 or 4 apps and combining them all into one. You're putting out nitrogen rates somewhere between a pound, maybe a pound and a half, maybe up into some of them will allow you to go up to 2 pounds, even depending on the product and the release characteristics of it. So with that being said, that's why we're talking about this, because what Dave is trying to challenge and say is that, hey, the traditional 6-week release, products that Matt talked about in the beginning with, an XCU or something like that, that's bunk. I don't want to go out there every 6 weeks and just throw stuff out there. So Matt, why don't you talk about how it's a little bit different with this nitrogen source and how it works relative to some of the other ones we've talked about already?
Yeah, so the one I'm going to talk about now, and I'm going to kind of throw a curveball out there, and that is going to be Nitroform. And Nitroform is a very insoluble urea formaldehyde. So think like a methylene urea of sorts, right? But this one is extremely insoluble. The advantage of this product is it has an extremely slow release rate, right? If that's what you're going for. Still going to be a similar release mechanism through soil microbe mineralization, right? It's got to break that down, consume it, and release the little bits of urea at a time. But this just happens so incredibly slowly. So you're talking about a product that this is ideal for a 6-month release or longer, right? 6-month, 8-month, 10-month, even 12 months. There's even some instances where I've talked to some old golf heads in Kentucky that said they weren't seeing response from it until the second year. That was where they finally started to see their response from it. So incredibly slow. Now, the caveat to Nitroform, and JPink, if you want to throw that up there, it's just got some statistics about Nitroform. The caveat to Nitroform compared to some of these extended polymer coated ureas is that Nitroform is not known for color. For whatever reason, though it is a slow release, though it may release on a relatively similar release curve as a PCU, as a PCU 180 or something of the sort. for whatever reason, I'm trying to find that image from University of Auburn that did a color analysis, turfgrass color, which is it can be relatively subjective. I don't think it was done on NDVI. I think this was a hand grade, but for whatever reason, Nitroform is not known as a color producer. So to kind of circle back to the one and done type of product that we're in lawn care, we live and die by the color of our grass. I think it eliminates Nitroform from being one of the potential options in this scenario. And I think it definitely puts a one and done type product with various ratios of different duration products back on the pedestal, and it's the optimal choice in this scenario. So, anyway, where I'm going with that is that your idea of using a one app product versus one of these more niche products, like specifically Nitroform, is probably the better bet.
Yeah, and the coating technology, and basically they coat that there's layers of coating depending on what your duration you want. If I want a 6-month duration, I think the one I'm looking at is 3 times through the sprayer, if I'm not mistaken. And
yeah, so
it is
what's called a reactive layer coating, right? Where they spray a catalyst and another product into a tumbler of sorts, and as these two chemicals come into contact with one another, it forms like it polymerizes basically, and that's how the polymers
polyurethane. Polyurethane is being formed on top of the granules, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why there's a part A, part B, and the thickness of that polyurethane shell determines how fast or how long your actual release rate is going to be. But that all is dependent on that granule not being broken in any way, shape, or form. Damaged.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why, for example, in my market, anything slow release is as good as a 30-day app. And
but it's got to travel to Hawaii too, right?
Yeah. It's as good as a 30-day app. So, and the thing is that if it is not picked up by the grass catcher, which is on 99% of all mowers here, it is then cut by that mower, and guess what? Your coated urea is now broken urea. It's urea.
Yeah, it needs to go into long turf. It needs to drive itself down. I've got real concerns about using it. The application accuracy scares me, because if you're a little off, like you're making a corner, you're coming around a bend, and a bed, and all of a sudden you're just not putting that distribution in certain places on the lawn. Guess what? You're going to find out in 2 months. Or if you over apply it in certain areas, you could end up with a mottled mess for 6 months. It's a big concern of mine. That's
why you should get a permagreen. Let the permagreen do the work, and you just be the excuse me. Let the permagreen do the work, and you just operate the machine and let the machine get the product where you need it.
I'm seriously considering cutting and going 2 different directions, but now we are extending the initial application time probably 2 months to get this first app down. I've missed my crabgrass window. I do have, I made try this as a trial to make sure I
that's smart.
understand how. What's that?
I think that's smart. You try it on 10, 20 properties and wrap your brain around it, watch what happens, and then, give you a data set to determine whether or not it makes sense to take it to scale or not.
Yeah, because spring apps are insane. We all know that. We're trying to beat the clock, and we're rushing to get down our Pro Diamond. Basically, that's what we do. I'm looking at a clock, and I want all of those apps done by May 8th. And so the idea of using, basically how many bags? You know what? Bag wise, it's on a 40-0-0. Bag wise for me, it isn't that many bags, but just getting that accuracy, not slopping your way through edges. And, let's face it, some of these properties are really complicated to get perfect accuracy. There's so many obstacles and things you got to get around, where you can get away with it when you're doing it 5 times a year for year after year. I know places that I may have missed on an app. It doesn't matter. I've hit that area a bunch of times. There's so much residual. There's better rooting. There's more cycling in those areas. All my lawns even out, even though, if I didn't get a perfectly accurate app. This is different. This is a totally different game to me.
Yeah, I don't know if it ultimately comes down to comfort, and that may be another thing you see too by putting this on 10 properties is you start to feel comfortable with the application method, right? And you don't feel the need to cross hatch each of your applications, and then now you're back to your standard time of getting everything down in a optimal time frame, and you're done with it.
Yeah, I'm not, and yeah, it was freaking out about nothing. It's like, hey, you know what? It came out. I don't see modeling. And on my yards, like I say, I've had these customers a long time. They basically, as soon as they green up until the snow flies, they're all pretty much the same color throughout the lawn. And I probably, if I wasn't perfect, it may not show. And if I'm going to come back in 5 weeks and hit it with color and maybe a little bit of foliar nitrogen, I figured on the app I was going to run, I'd be about 0.05 of a pound release a week of nitrogen. 0.05 of a pound. That's 6 months. 1.5 pounds of nitrogen, and plenty of opportunity to, if it's falling a little bit behind, if I'm not real pleased that when I pull up the street, I can add a little bit more of nitrogen, for one thing, into that spray program. The one thing about pounding away at it like I do is when I show up to do an app, it doesn't look like it needs an app, and that's how I want it. Right?
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about the oh, go ahead, Ray. I'm sorry.
Yes, that is basically you make a very good statement in that if the turf doesn't look like it needs something, then you have done your job. And that is kind of how I do things as well, is that I tell people, if you can see it before I do, there's something wrong.
You're right.
And the hardest thing to do,
and
Ray,
that doesn't
is nothing sometimes. Go ahead, Dave.
All right. Well, this is all grass type, ideal grass type. Right now we're in a very dry. We have been in a drought. The spigot shut off the end of July. We have been in 2.5 months of drought, and most of the old residential lawns have big oak trees and creeping red fescue. There is nothing you're going to do to it. You're not going to do anything with fertilizer in those old creeping red fescue lawns and oak trees. They are parched. The oak tree stole all the water, and that plant is shut down. We won't see it green up until spring. And so this is all kind of, this goes to the grading system. Matt, I think you brought this up last week. You to kind of categorize your properties where you're going to utilize these expensive nutrients, these higher costs. Do you sign up someone that's got an old, just terrible mix of grasses from 1940 and sell them 5 applications when by the middle of the summer that lawn has shut down? We're not going to see it look nice until spring. And that's how a lot of my lawns are. Just a lot of lawns in this area in general.
Sure. So Matt, what if I told you that the price to go out with a one and done product, it's got prodiamine or dithiopyr on it, is going to be, let me look at this, what I calculated, about $16.50 per thousand. It's going to get you 1.5 pounds of N.
In a single application is going to be $16 per thousand.
$16.56 if you want to be exact.
See, that's going to blow out my budget for the year.
Yeah.
Like literally, I can't. Well, I couldn't. If I was doing 8 applications, like I would net zero. I would lose money on the year if I was doing 8 applications. $2 a thousand square feet is about max of where I can run on average per application per year, not including seed, right? But just a standard application going out making a treatment, $2 per thousand per app. Say I'm doing 8 apps, that's $16 per thousand square feet that I can be at max on average through the course of the year.
So how do you price
now?
this
This is a high volume. You got to think like this is typical high volume type lawn care though, right? Which is where I feel most comfortable and familiar with. Now let's put it this way. Let's say it does cost. Hang on, let me break out the calculator here. It costs $16 per thousand square feet, right? And we'll say I'm doing 6 applications a year. That's $2.66 a thousand, right? And say I need that to be at 20% of my material cost in order for me to be profitable on the year, right? So I would need to price that by 5 approximately. So I would need to have my prices somewhere around $13.33 per thousand square foot on average across the total square footage of what I treat. That's not extreme.
But
$130 and $133 for a 10,000 square foot lawn application. If I'm only going to treat 50, 60 lawns, then I can probably find those 50, 60 customers that would pay that amount. It's not going to be. I'm not going to be able to adopt the True Green marketing method of hey, first app half off, last app half off. Here I'll do your 25,000 square feet for $100 kind of sort of thing, right? And you have to be very true to the way you budget. And when you do show up for a 5,000 square foot lawn, well, what is that going to cost? You got to get $70 for it. And that, I think that's doable. That's 100% doable. I've sold them much higher than that before.
Take 100 let's take 100 because my phone is my calculator and I can't do this. Take 160 divided. Wait, let me think here. 45 times 3.5. What does that come up to?
157.5. 157 and a half.
Okay, so that is 6 months or 6 months of base coat nitrogen and your prodiamine on 1 acre. So look at those numbers, because those are the numbers I'm working with.
So that's
And
$3.62 per thousand. And yeah, I mean, if that if that gets you through five, we'll say that takes you through 5 applications. In your last fertilizer round of the year, you apply ammonium sulfate at
back to
a half pound
rocks.
in. Yeah. Well, you could just get straight ammonium sulfate 2100, apply it a half pound in, 2.5 pounds 1,000, and that's going to cost you, we'll say roughly $30 an acre. So now you're at 90 cents, right? 1,000, somewhere around there. And so on the year, in terms of fertilizer here, plus 90, you've spent. I did that wrong. Plus 0.93, 162 plus 0.9. Now you're at $4.52, per 1,000 square feet, and you've got a budget that's going to allow you to go to 12. Now you've got $7.50 per 1,000 square feet that's not allocated for anything, that you can allocate for your broadleaf weed control. You can allocate for whatever else it is you want to do out there, right? For your micronutrient sprays that you want to do, you got ample money there. You can run a good foliar, sulfated micronutrient mix for cheap. We're talking 40, 50 cents 1,000, right? So now we're in a completely different ball game of that makes 100% total sense. Let's play ball.
And I have more energy, and I'm able to react to my customers. We haven't even talked about bringing a fungicide program into my world. And
wow.
That isn't part of the $7. That this is extra money, but
exactly.
I'm ready I'm ready to bring a real high-tech fungicide program into my A category lawns, because I think Matt, you and I talked about me being in the transition zone this summer on all my tall fescue lawns I planted, and how I don't like that anymore. And we're not going to let that happen again. And so without changing the subject too bad, what experience do you guys have with the chemistry from the intrinsic chemistry from BASF? The pyraclostrobin.
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 Oh,
we were just
okay.
talking about this last night.
Okay,
at 1 o'clock in the
pyraclostrobin.
morning.
That is what I call premium disease control, because Dave, this was me 20 years ago. Insignia DG. Okay, that was one of my foundational products. Insignia plus Subdue plus 3336 or Eagle. That was my that's my go-to fungicide. Reactive treatment if I'm dealing with disease and I didn't prevent it. And fast forward to now, I'm a big fan of what's called Lexicon Intrinsic. And what?
Yes.
And what?
Yep.
And you know what Lexicon is? Of course, that's a pyraclostrobin suspension plus an SDHI fungicide to cover the dollar spot. And for me, Lexicon has a special place in that I call that part of my emergency kit. It works that well. Okay, when you need a fungicide and your tail is on the line, Lexicon is one of the things that I think about.
Well, I have used fungicides. I've got a couple of properties that I do a program on. I've always exclusively used the Pillar G product, because it was just I keep a couple of bags in the truck. It was emergency product. Keep a couple of bags on the truck, and if we had to jump into it, and so I know. Go ahead.
Can real quick? Can we get Ryan DeMay's statement on granular fungicide real quick?
Yes, because I'm thinking it, but
I'll just put it up on the screen. Hang on, I'll do that. Do you want me to say it out loud?
I mean, either or, whatever's easiest for you.
Because
go ahead and talk for a second, Dave, because I want to make sure
Dave,
I say it right.
Yeah.
The way I even operate is such that if I need to have a specialty mix for 5 or 10,000 square foot of turf, that is not an issue for me. It's very easy for me to do that because I'm basically set up to deal with it. It's not like I have a 500-gallon tank of a non-applicable tank mix that I got to use up or I got to add to or I got to finagle to make it work. I can literally make up a 5,000 square foot batch and get it done. So that's how something like Lexicon, becomes very cost effective for me because people often ask me, how can I afford all of these like extremely expensive products? And the reason why I can afford them is because I'm not mixing up all 5 acres worth of it and wasting, most of it. It only comes out when needed, and I measure down to the milliliter. So it's only where it's needed, when it's needed, and as it's needed.
Well, I want to switch. I'm kind of fascinated about the plant health response of pyraclostrobin, and
it's actually not
recently. Go ahead.
And it's actually not just the the fungicide itself.
Not the
BASF,
fungicide itself.
BASF has added something to it that apparently is a SAR, elictor. And likewise,
Yep.
And likewise, Dave, do you know what else goes in my tank mixes nowadays if I'm spraying fungicide?
Tell me.
Bayer Signature Stress Guard.
Okay.
And you know why? You know why Signature Stress Guard?
SAR.
SAR, and also, Ryan, tell me what you think about people that suggest applying strobilurine fungicides for P.O.T.U.S. Tell me what you think of those people.
Wait. Before you do that, let's start with what is your statement on granular fungicides?
Let me make sure I read it correctly. Granular fungicides are like sheepskin condoms. You know what you're supposed to do. Geez, I screwed it up already. I got to start over. Can we cut this? All right.
Yep.
Granular fungicides are like sheepskin condoms. You know it's supposed to do the same thing as what you should be using, but you're so preoccupied with it not working, it's kind of difficult to enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There it goes. So here's the polar genius. For me. I know you know. So here's what we're gonna do to help, right? Let's talk about what we can do to help. Okay. So you want to run these. You want to run these different products, right? You asked the question, how do I feel about people that want to treat Pythium with azoxystrobin? The same as I feel that people would say, oh, you can cure dollar spot with azoxystrobin, and we know that that's not true, and it actually could enhance that disease, right? So if
it can make it worse.
We understand, good agronomy and the research that's gone into it, we can make those suggestions and steer people clear. Insignia, though, that was one of the the nice things about it when it first came out, Ray, is that they marketed it as a strobilarian that actually had suppression properties, right? Suppression activity on dollar spot. Very weak, but they were able to claim it on the label, and there was some evidence to suggest that they Yeah, that did. It did a little bit, right? So, but
But
it was hot to
Ryan,
trot.
but Ryan, I would never trust one of my lawns to just marginal suppression from pyraclostrobin. In those days, I always did a hot mix consisting of either 3336 or Eagle with pyraclostrobin before they
Yeah.
came out with Lexicon. I mean, I
So-
didn't leave it to chance.
Yeah, so the lexicon, when you add in, I'll just use the trade name for right now, exemplar, right? You take exemplar and excidia, you mix those together, you get lexicon. Okay. Now, Dave, I can see the benefit for you, right, in having those two products because you could be really strong. Like, I mean, it is going to be very difficult to find a prepackaged chemistry that's that strong to put out in your toughest of times, right? The good and the bad, right? So the good and the bad. The SDHI in that particular case is really only going to suppress dollar spot. It's super strong in dollar spot. It's pretty okay on most other things, right? So the other thing that you run the risk of, just like the strobilurins, right? The QOIs, they have an insanely high susceptibility to resistance, right? So you don't want to overuse those, and you want to be careful. So, if you there, but there is also some synergistic effect there with those two together in the tank. Now, the last thing I'm going to say too on price, right? Let's just price this out real quick. I'm rounding up here a tad, maybe $20 or so, but that's going to be. Well, where are we at here? Sorry, I missed the decimal point. All those damn mundane details. Matt Martin, cover your ears. Only Ray and I are going to feel comfortable about this. Yeah, you $11.47 1,000 for Lexicon. You are now in the champagne. You are now in the champagne room of fungicides. You are not out on the main stage with Cinnamon and Macy with 3 E's. You are now in the champagne room. Okay. This is real.
Yeah, this gets real. However, Ryan,
Crystal.
we've been talking over the last several weeks about what it
The
costs.
gems, ruby, sapphire, emerald, they're all there. They're all working right now.
Mhm.
They can't watch the show. They have to watch it on tape delay. Ladies, how are you?
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. But Ryan, weren't we just talking in previous weeks about how grass seed is expensive and difficult to get a hold of in some cases, so that if your lawn perishes from disease, it may be expensive and hard to recover from, because it's not like the old days where, oh, so sorry, your lawn died from disease. Let's just go spread some seed on it in the fall and we're all good again. Whereas for me, I don't know what my pain point would be for fungicides, because $11 per 1,000 square foot, Ryan. You know how much $11 buys me of grass?
2 square feet.
2 square feet, exactly.
Well, so that's the other thing here too, and this is another messaging thing, right? So we've talked about, a little bit on the fertilizer side of, like, on the from a business perspective, you got to get really smart. From a best practices perspective, it's going to make total sense that you can sell and say, hey, I'm just trying to be more ecologically responsive, whatever the case might be, to not applying P and K if I don't have to, as we referenced with the Kreuzer stuff. But on the grass seed front, right, this is the hardest one to change, right? It's the hardest one to change of the disease triangle, right? So, right, Ray? So we need host, we need a virulent pathogen, and we need a susceptible environment, right? Now, environment, maybe we can change things. Maybe, Dave, you're talking about the oak trees. We limb those up. We get some more air movement in there, so on and so forth. Pathogen, maybe we can knock it down, suppress inoculum, with different applications at different times of the year to suppress that to a threshold that is economically and commercially acceptable. But, and Matt Martin has seen this, right? Choosing better grasses that have better genetics is going to be the key here, right? I just posted this on Twitter a little while back. It was said by a good man here who runs one of the bigger sod farms in the state. I'm screwing up all the good quotes tonight. I'm killing myself, Ray. Most expensive supply that you will ever buy for turf grass is cheap grass seed. It's the truth,
Yeah.
right? If you don't have the if you don't have the genetics and the chops, you're going to spend a boatload, right? In Matt Martin terms, a metric thrust ton of money to take care of said grass that is cheap. So I think that's another thing from a selling point is, yeah, we are the most expensive aeration and seed game in town, but you know what? We're using grass seed that checks all these boxes and is high quality and is going to withstand and survive this. So we don't have to use this $11.50 thousands. You know, that's just your cost, right? That's I don't know what kind of an app is that to the customer. I mean, that's a $100 app or
$50 a
something, right?
thousand. Yeah.
$50 a thousand. Yeah. I mean, so it's real easy when you start doing the economics like that to say, hey, let's just take an acre, right? I can spray your lawn one time for $500 an acre, or I can seed it one time, and that'll last in perpetuity as long as we keep it alive and take care of it for $500 an acre with quality seed. Which would you prefer?
Ryan, you nailed why I don't have extensive fungicide programs, because I had abundant availability of turfgrass seed. So if it was bad, I did not want my customers chasing bad with good money.
Absolutely.
And it was easier to say, hey, look, this is not a good mix of grass. I will replace it for you. And so what has happened in the turf seed market, you know, and I got to spend a week up in the for Medalist Seed, and I got to see how they did this, and it's really a fascinating dedication that the seed market has put into the genetics, the finding plants out in nature, producing, bringing them back to the shop, watching them, letting them produce a seed head, taking those seeds, producing a little tiny plot. I mean, it's just fascinating to see what has happened the last 2 years up there. Is just, it's kind of personal. It's devastating. So now I'm looking at these lawns that I see load up with red thread May and June, and then go to hell the rest of the summer. And unless we're having abundant rain, you know, I'd like to put some crop protection behind them, and that's why, you know, this pyraclostrobin, this plant health SAR response. I finally tracked down one of the people from BASF. He's retired now, but he was on the ag side when this was introduced in ag, and they produced higher yields that weren't fungicidal reasons. And so they studied it, and what they found out was this molecule was affecting, and when they brought it into turf, it was affecting the crown of the plant to reduce the respiration process, to keep the plant from consuming its carbon during the hot summer respiration processes, a cooling of the plant. And I'm still waiting for all that data to come in. He's going to send it to me. But that compound is doing more than protecting the plant. It's helping the plant in ways that other compounds that I've never heard of. You know, so that's why I'm kind of pointing my finger. I want that chemistry in a fungicide program on some of these, on certainly all my tall fescue yards, but some of these other lawns that can get a little fussy. And so that's why I brought the whole thing up, to see if you guys knew anything about this.
Yeah, you're exactly right about, you know, the changes that it elicits in respiration, right? And some might say that's part of its SAR response, right? So again, for the folks listening at home, right, we have two different processes in the plant that are going on at all times simultaneously, right? Photosynthesis and respiration. Photosynthesis is the production of carbohydrate reserves, and respiration is the consumption of carbohydrate reserves. If you look at the bimodal growth curve, right, of cool season grass, right, so it grows a lot in the spring, dies off in the summer, it doesn't die off, but slows down in the summer, picks back up in the fall, right? That's a function of weather first and foremost, but in these high temperatures, when these physiological processes slow down, what we're talking about is photosynthesis slows down and we're not producing as much food as we're consuming, right? So that's why we get a sloughing off or a dieback of roots as the roots shrink up closer to the top. So that's high soil temperatures. I mean, there's a bunch of other reasons, but that's the main one, right? So if we have something available to us that can slow it down, albeit temporarily, that can help. And so that is the rub of the whole thing, Dave, that I worry about for you is that, even if we get in, and I haven't sitting here jabbering and looking at a couple other things here relative to our conversation, but the thing that I worry about from just a scheduling and a workflow standpoint is, to me, it's hard to just pin a date on the calendar and say, yep, June 21st, Father's Day weekend, we're going to go out and we're going to make that pyraclostrobin app. It's not always that way, right? Especially up there, where you're at, it could be, like you said, it could be dry for a few months and everything's fine. Or, the fronts are coming right across the lake and you're getting, showers after showers after showers. And that's just the way it is. And so it's tough to sit there. And I don't know how you plan that from a workflow standpoint. That's the one part I couldn't tell you from a super high-end lawn care other than a business model, unless you had so few customers and clients that it was easy to pull off, one and go do that app when you needed to leading into it. It's just, I know that's not feasible. So let me look real quick. Insignia, I'll do the math here for you real quick while we're talking, but go ahead. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. What do you think about this?
Well, I am fascinated with this whole SAR response and the activity on the reactive oxygen species that kind of take place with pyraclostrobin, and then what we were talking about just last night. Seriously, at 1:00 in the morning, Demay and I were texting back and forth about a new one from BASF, Rivatech, right? And it contains a new active ingredient that they have that's another DMI, and supposedly there's some sort of synergistic effect with the pyraclostrobin that is really advances. They're seeing mega duration out of the product, and also big yield increases in soybean. That the only thing they can attribute it to is the reduction in respiration rate. So there's definitely a lot going on there. Now, what I would say from a lawn care perspective, it's way overkill. Way overkill. It's awesome, and that's top of the line.
Unless you're Ray or I.
Yeah. If I just did a $2.5 million install and was growing iron cutter Bermuda in Canada, I get it. I get it. If it costs you, yeah. If it's costing $11 a thousand, who cares? Who cares? You got a $2.5 million investment you're worried about here, right? However, if I've got an $800 seed job that I'm worried about and I want to maintain it, and I know about what the genetics are going to give me, then I'm going to back that down. And under no circumstances whatsoever am I going to spend that kind of money. Should I? Mm-hmm. I don't see the necessity for it, even from a must, like in order of magnitude of protection here. Would I? Definitely not, because it just far exceeds anything I would ever consider from a budgetary perspective. And so I'm not. I'm going to go with tried and true chemistries that are easily available, that are generic, and are going to cost me fractions of that. What do you say, Ryan?
Pyraclostrobin by itself, so as a insignia, right? You're looking at a price of about $6.80 per thousand, about $2.96 an acre. Drop in the bucket for Ray and I, no problem. We got that folded up in our sock right now,
and you see,
or folded up somewhere in the champagne room.
The thing about pyraclostrobin is, number one, it does not aggravate dollar spot. It doesn't necessarily control it, but it also doesn't aggravate it. And I kind of leveraged that in my favor because, October for me is the cusp of disease hell. I'm right on the edge of disease hell. So I'm literally, almost there as far as disease pressure goes. And what I get hit with starting November, December, January is rhizoctonia, dollar spot, and pisium. But Insignia is was a foundational product. And then in the last few years, these chemical companies came up with all of these good premixed products that combine like a SDHI fungicide with a strobilurin or a strobilurin with a DMI. And, I swear by them because they can work very well, because I feel almost like I'm kind of a Bayer fanboy right now.
Careful how you say that.
Yeah, but it's true because let's see, what do I have on the truck right now? Exteris Stress Guard, Armada, Signature Stress Guard, and of course Dilox and Merit for the creepy crawlies.
Yeah. So, all right, and y'all tell me this: in terms of dollar spot control, is propiconazole not performing anymore?
DMI resistance is absolutely a big deal. Like if you are not seeing results from that, I absolutely encourage people to send it in for $100, $125 test at the most. Send it to NCSU, send it to Rutgers, send it to Missouri. Any one of these labs can be able to tell you if you've got DMI resistance. And if you do, then even at $70 a gallon, you're stupid for spraying it because it ain't going to work. Nor is any other DMI. So I would caution people that if you are seeing that, right,
Stop
lack
spraying
of
it.
response. Yeah, just stop. And at least, if you think you do, it's worth $100 to find out. It's worth a gallon and a half of product to find out if you should never ever spray it again.
Yeah. And the other little factor to inject in is, what does propiconazole potentially bring with it at times when the turf is already stressed, stunted, and shut down growth-wise?
Growth regulatory effects. But in turn, dollar spot season, though, is going to be kind of during vigorous growth. At least where I am, it's dollar spot is chooching in that in between of spring leading late spring. I'll say late spring before brown patch season hits. Could be totally different up there. I don't know.
And propiconazole by itself for dollar spot is a loser in my mind.
I don't know.
I sprayed a lot of dollar spot on golf courses, boys, with all kinds of different stuff that was cheapest of cheap to the most expensive, right? And I've succeeded more times than I failed, but I'm probably like a 300 lifetime hitter on killing dollar spot. So, that would put me in the Hall of Fame in baseball. Golf course superintendent, you do what you got to do. You get by. Throw a little N at it. It'll be fine.
I have a pretty high kill rate on dollar spot myself, but I kind of go old school in that I don't necessarily gravitate towards the latest and greatest DMI when I'm dealing with dollar spot. I like thiophanate methyl quite a bit.
I mean, the stuff that I want to use is not legal on residential lawns. So that's the other thing too, is I'm coming at it from a completely different perspective. It's not even legal on most sports fields. So that's something else too that you're gonna see and you're gonna continue to see, is that a lot of this new chemistry comes out. You're not gonna see a ton of it that's labeled for residential. You're just not. because
And
it's not worth the
spe-
pain, agony, and the limited, revenue that they're going to take in. Go ahead, Ray. I'm sorry I interrupted.
yeah, because I know what DMI chemistry you're talking about that BASF released, and
Navicon and Maxtima just came out, so it's a DMI
yeah,
without the growth regulatory effects, right? So that's the
right.
next generation, is that we still have, demethylase inhibitors. However, they do not, the new ones here do not have that same effect.
Yeah, and
there's a couple other ones
yeah,
too
so
that I'm gonna go. Shit, I mean, look.
no, metrofluconazole is not, allowed anywhere near a residential turf site anyway. And I would imagine that BASF is thinking, why should they bother?
Oh yeah.
Why should they bother? I mean, but on the other
Gentlemen,
hand,
go ahead, Ray. Go ahead. I was just going to say we're going to have to wrap this up. We're moving in on 2.5 hours here, so we're going
good
to
Lord.
move to the show
thanks,
after the
Pat.
show.
yeah. So yeah, there are other DMIs, but just know what you're getting into when you use them, because I'm also fond of another DMI that, do you know why I like it? Longevity. And that's the precise reason why the EPA hates that one, is because of its longevity. And that would be your good old Bileton.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Bileton is something that I'm very familiar with. I know it's very effective, but it was brought to my attention that it's on the EPA hit list.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be gone. It'll be gone after this year. So hey, Dave, seriously, I'm sure we could sit here and rap all day. I think you're definitely a prime candidate to come back on here at some point, maybe this winter, wrap on this a little bit more, because there's definitely
maybe I can
a lot more
figure
to
out how to run my computer. Yeah, I would love to get back on there, and as I continue to dig into all of this, like I say, this is how do I run better in the future? Pure selfish reasons. How am I going to do this better? And I really appreciate the time and what you guys were able to contribute. Your thoughts on a different way to provide the nutrition, basically provide green, healthy grass like I've always done, without all the rocks, all the just being married to that the entire time. And so I appreciate your input on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
We appreciate you. We will definitely have JPink reach out to you and about getting you rescheduled, because boy, we could really do another deep dive on fungicides, because it's just a whole nother chaotic can of worms. And also, I'd like to talk about it from the business aspect of what the business, looks like as this type of company, right? And that's a whole nother segment we could do. And I think that's 100% worth a visit, especially for people that are in Midwest or cooler type climates that could take advantage of these types of situations. All right, everyone,
hey, Matt,
what? Go ahead.
Where are we going to be next Thursday?
Next Thursday, we are going to be live at the Green Industry Expo. We've got, listen, I'm telling y'all for the first time, Ray and Ryan, we've got some special surprises that are going to be coming up.
God.
And I can't, oh man, I am so pumped. So anyway, all of that's coming up. We will be in Louisville. If you know, if you don't, you don't. I think the show is completely sold out at this point. We will have instructions on where it will be, how to get there, and all that fun stuff coming up. And of course, we're going to be doing a private AMA for all the patrons. Thank you so much for the support, because that's what allows us to continue to do this. So that way we don't have to hawk a bunch of granular azoxystrobin at you in claiming that it will offer any kind of positive benefit on lithium. So, Dave, thank you so much for being our guest. Gentlemen, thank you so much for helping guide this along. We're going to move to the show. After the show, if you're a patron, you know what I'm talking about. If you're a channel supporter, you know what I'm talking about. We will post a link over in Dirty Deeds if you'd like to figure out how to get in on that. This is going to be grown men talking about grown men things. If you're scared of bad words or dirty jokes or any of that sort, it's not for you, and that's 100% okay. If you're into that kind of thing and are looking for additional content, head over to patreon.com/burn and return. And for the cost of an airport beer, you get to participate in this. And we're going to have a good time. Everybody, thank you so much. We'll catch y'all on the flip side.